All right, so my name's Tony Pietrocola. I'm gonna be doing this presentation today, but here's how we like to do presentations, right? By no means am I an expert in anything. Don't know everything, but you guys do. You guys are actually practically doing this stuff every day. So, I did this presentation yesterday at the Women in Cybersecurity, and we made it interactive, right? So, thoughts, ideas, if I say something that could be expounded upon, throw it out, right? This is a community of people that should be helping each other. There's not like, 50 or 60 silos in here. And yesterday we had some really nice interactive discussions where some folks from a large organization just had some ideas on how things could be potentially utilized with the cloud. I couldn't answer them, but some folks in the audience did. It was a really fun interactive discussion. So same concept here. Let's have a discussion, and we'll even throw around the mic so we can make it official. So that's what we're going to talk about today: cloud vulnerabilities. Everybody's moving to the cloud, has moved to the cloud, hybrid, will be, whatever, some type of thing. If you guys paid attention to Wall Street yesterday, you saw Microsoft had their earnings, right? Okay. Their earnings weren't, it's a weird macroeconomic environment. Their earnings were fine, but Azure was insane, right? 42% year over year growth. Like, that's crazy, right? Like, it's not like a $100 million business or a $1 billion business. You're talking tens of billions of dollars, and they're ripping through their growth. Same thing with Google with GCP, and obviously the same thing with Amazon, right? And I'm sure everybody in here probably has 3 boxes on their porch right now, but that business is kind of streamlined, right? It's AWS that's really providing tremendous profitability for that company, so you can have 3 more boxes on your porch. So we'll talk about some ideas today, some concepts. We'll get to some things you should be thinking about. And you're not going to leave here like, oh my God, if I didn't step into that presentation, I'd never have known this. This is stuff you guys probably know, have thought through. It just sometimes takes repetition and understanding where some of these maybe best practices can help you guys, okay? That's it. That's all this presentation's about. And then you get to eat lunch. And then there's a bourbon tasting tonight that you should take advantage of because it's bourbon and why not, right? All right, so this is what everybody thinks about with the cloud. Right? It's blue. This is Cleveland, Ohio, 364 out of the 365 days a year, right? It's beautiful. It's sunny. It's fantastic. It's not raining or crappy, is it?
Are you in sales?
100% I am. What's your budget? Nice. Let's have some bourbon tonight together then. No, I'm just joking. So this is what everybody thinks about with the cloud, right? We're going to move to the cloud. It's going to be easy. It's going to be smooth. Got big guys with big pockets ripping the security. I got nothing, right? This is what everybody thinks it is. And this is what I think this is Cleveland, Ohio, 365. This is what the cloud becomes. Now, granted, I built an entire company in the cloud, so I obviously love the cloud just as much as everybody. I see the benefits of it. But when you think about security and a shared security model, when you think about pricing, when you think about how it's utilized, the growth, are you going into containers and things like that? Like, there's so much beyond it. It becomes its own discipline, its own group, its own talent. And you might not even, I don't know the organizations everybody's with, big companies, small, mid, whatever. Even the big guys don't have big cloud groups these days, right? I mean, it's kind of funny what the talent looks like. So people are obviously migrating to more cloud, less infrastructure, those types of things that they're controlling. All right, now, this would be the worst presentation in the history of the world if I didn't put the obligatory Gartner freak me out quotes, right? That's what Gartner does best. So, nearly all successful attacks on cloud services are because of us, humans, right? Misconfigurations, mismanagement. Here's what's interesting about that. And you take a step back, and you're like, okay, well, obviously, the more technology can be brought in, the better, right? But with misconfigurations and mismanagement, that tells you everything you have to know. Cloud is complex. Cloud has like 1,848 trillion little settings and devices I have to try to figure out. And by the way, different clouds do different things, different settings, configurations can impact everything that you could be doing with it, right? What's great about this is as we grow and get smarter, we can reduce these. And as technology gets better, and we'll be talking about cloud security posture management and new tools that are starting to pop up, it's gonna help. But this is a big problem right now, and it's a problem that's probably not going to be solved anytime soon. So again, let's keep going with Gartner. The overwhelming majority of cloud is not somebody maybe stealing a password or breaking in somehow, or maybe sending you that phishing email that somebody does click, which everybody seems to do, and gets their way to it, right? That's the way maybe your network is hacked, an endpoint, and maybe even an application, I don't know. But mismanagement, misconfiguration, setting problems is the biggest. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this presentation is my company we're only a SOC company. We're only a security operations center. And of course, all of our clients have hybrid environments, and it doesn't matter where they are, North America, Middle East, we have clients all over the place, but they're all plagued by the same thing. When they see an event happening with the cloud, I'm talking 99% of the time, it's a misconfiguration problem. Any other thing, an endpoint or a firewall or whatever it is, it's somebody, actively pursuing some type of campaign, right? So it's crazy. Like, we physically see this every day, and that's why I wanted to talk on this subject. By the way, not a cloud expert by any means. I could put together some slides. I have a subscription to Gartner, so I'm like, maybe I'll be the best guy for this presentation. Okay. Forget what you hear with Gartner. CB Insights, I don't know if people use CB Insights as sourcing. Here's why CB Insights is a fantastic source of data. They are not a tech company. I mean, they are a tech company, but they don't just do tech. They have tremendous outreach into both the small, mid-size, and enterprise market, right? When you look at too many statistics from companies, they're very misleading. They could affect your budget process. I don't know what everybody's role is in here, but they could affect the folks you want to bring onto your teams. And we let sometimes these things really influence a business process. CB Insights has great sourcing data. So, biggest cloud security threats, right? I mean, look at the top two, right? Misconfiguration and unauthorized access. Well, the unauthorized access sometimes comes with the misconfiguration, right? Like, all these things kind of play together, and those are such a big component of how a cloud or a cloud has been, faces threats. Number 3 also makes you laugh, because every day of the week, you probably hear, hey, do you have APIs? Can we share APIs? Where's your APIs? And everybody just assumes, plug in these APIs, life's good, right? Life's easier with APIs, but so much more complex with security. And just a show of hands, for those people doing any type of API integrations with third parties, partners, whatever, how much security do you actually do on those APIs to make sure they're secure, been vetted, those types of things? Show of hands, like you feel real comfortable about it. One gentleman here. Everybody should talk to this guy. Oh, 2, yeah, 2.5. What's that? Try. You absolutely try. And we all think like maybe even we do it that first time, right? We go through security, it works, we're like, this is good to go. It should be fine for the rest of our lives. Let's set it and forget it. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, you're out of a job and your company's brought down, right? Like, that's not what we want. So APIs, and sometimes folks don't think about those, or you think it's a trusted vendor. It's Salesforce.com. It's SolarWinds. Why would I not integrate with their APIs? They're big, giant companies. And then all of a sudden, you find out through the Wall Street Journal what the heck happened to one of those companies and how it might affect you, right, and your customers. I mean, you can see the rest of the data keeps going down. Foreign state is my favorite, right? I don't know what everybody's business is in here. Maybe if you're NASA, maybe if you're federal government in this room, maybe there's some state-sponsored stuff, but probably for the majority of companies in here, you probably don't have to worry about state-sponsored coming to get you. It just depends on what the business might be, what's your intellectual property, the value of your data. But a lot of folks will also say, oh, the Russians are coming. The Chinese people, they're very aggressive. They want, the CCP wants our data. Probably not, right? They think they've got bigger fish to fry. And when you look at Russia, and we got some great information the other day. So I happen to be part of an organization called InfraGard, on the board of it. Any InfraGard members in here? Well, I know you are, Jess. You're on the board with me. But thank you. Jess is the best, by the way. So there's a few. And we're going to be talking about our next event. It's going to be fantastic. So we want to see everybody there. It's at the end of the year, Goodyear Hanger. I got a nice little slide to prop up InfraGard. But it's a great organization. It's a joint organization between private businesses, obviously for Northern Ohio, there's chapters all over the country, and the FBI. And it's a great way to bring in ideas and share content and get together. It's just a fantastic organization. It's free to join. You just got to pass a background check. So if any of you have a little bit of shadiness in the past, and maybe you won't get through the background check, but that's it. It's pretty easy. But they even told us yesterday, or at our board meeting on Monday, which was here, they've seen a tremendous decline in state-sponsored from Russia because Russia's so preoccupied with, obviously, the war going on. But they did bring this up, and this is interesting. Obviously, I'm not a law enforcement person, definitely not a military person. Like, those guys are so much smarter than me. They are saying as this war gets colder, meaning the environment's getting colder, right? The temperatures are dropping. They're going to have snow and ice and all kinds of stuff like we have. This war is going to get even more kinetic, less cyber. So when that happens, the Russian folks, the Russian GRU, have to put their resources to work. And where do you think that's going to come back? Back to probably the businesses of the United States and other areas. So there's been a huge drop since that war, unfortunately. And then obviously you're probably going to see an uptick, and that's from the FBI. And I trust what they say because obviously they're fighting it every day of the week. So keep that in mind. But then you see other stuff, lost mobile devices, theft of service. I mean, you put all these together, those top two and the APIs are such an important thing. So let's talk about the shared security model. I mean, in this room, how many people know, honestly, that it is a shared security model with your cloud provider? Like everybody's shaking their head. Hey, we totally know this, totally know this. If you're a CEO of a decent-sized company or CFO, do you think they think it's a shared security model? Less so. I mean, they think, hey, we're ripping this check off to Microsoft or Google. Those guys are probably the best security people in the world. For themselves, they absolutely are. But for you, they really don't care, right? They're not going to let their infrastructure be brought down. They're going to make sure the utility part of it, the plumbing, the electricity, all that stuff is never going to be hacked, not be brought down. But as you launch your environments, as you spin up new tenants, as you publish applications continually, do you really think they know what's going on with the security portion of it? Absolutely not. That's where that shared security model becomes so important. That's on you. That's on everybody in this room. That's on your teams. And there's a lot of folks who just don't understand that. Or they shake their heads in a meeting like this, like, yeah, we totally know that. And then you go back to the office and there's no budget to do it. You can't bring the talent in. Or maybe you think you can handle it or your group can handle it and you actually can't, right? Those are really important concepts to understand. That shared security model, everybody knows it's shared security, right? Everybody shook their head in this room, everyone. But do we really practice that? And that's a big thing, right? And this is what we tell our customers all the time. Anybody ever see Kevin Hart in his YouTube thing? When he sits in the ice tub and he interviews someone, it's great, right? Like the guy's so funny, and whoever he interviews, they're sitting there freezing in an ice tub together. Like, it's just a great interview concept. But like, come on, man. Like, how can we not know this as security professionals, right? I know what everybody's to-do list looks like. Like, it's ugly, right? And then think about your to-do list after today and tomorrow. Being here listening to a guy like me, that to-do list is growing. It doesn't go away because you're not getting much work done in here. And these are the things that get pushed off, right? Thinking about those shared security models. And like we talked about a little bit earlier, man, these guys aren't here to help you. Bill Gates ain't here to help you, right? He's off jet setting somewhere. The new Jeff Bezos, he used to be like a geeky tech guy like me. Now all of a sudden he's this stud, right? He's like Vin Diesel walking around. This guy's got jets and boats, and all of a sudden, man, he's a different dude. He doesn't care about our security either, right? And Google, they're just watching us stealing our data. They really don't care about our data. So at the end of the day, they're not here to help, but we need those platforms, okay? That means it's on us. It's on you guys to figure this out. So let's talk about the goals of cloud security, except the obvious of obviously making sure you're not hacked or brought down. Number one, what about the recovery of data, right? Being able to use these cloud platforms not only helps us deploy fast, not have to spin up hardware, buy software and those types of things, but what about data recovery, right? Using these types of things to make sure data can be recovered quickly, can be smooth. We've got different regions in the United States, different regions around the world, to make sure that in the event of outages, in the event of any type of continuity issue, we can push these things and spin these things up quick, right? What about privacy of data across networks, right? I think sometimes with the cloud, when you think about cloud security, it has to be about privacy. So many companies, no matter what you do, financial, healthcare, tech, government, whatever you might be in this room, you allow your customers or your stakeholders, people outside of your organization, more and more access to platforms, applications, and data, right? So obviously, to be able to protect their data, their activities is just as important, right? Because you have a stake to make sure those stakeholders are held in the highest regard. The ability to minimize human error, although the whole part of this presentation is there's too much human error, but obviously using some of these cloud services can also do that as well. According to, this was done by the HHS from a healthcare perspective, and what I found this to be interesting is, how many companies here, or people in here from a healthcare organization of any kind? So, okay, some good numbers. Obviously, Cleveland's rife with tremendous healthcare organizations, from the clinic to UH to whatever. There's more. There's tons of companies that supply them, right? So I thought this data was interesting, especially coming from NSA. Unrestricted inbound and outbound ports. I mean, think about some of these types of things that seem so, I guess, simple, that seem so top of mind, that maybe get pushed apart and maybe not closed up as fast as you might think. So that one seems to be like such low-hanging fruit, but that's actually number one from the HHS, where the NSA did this research for them. Disabled monitor and logging capabilities, right? Like, how can we not know that that's happened? How does there not something telling us that those are taking place? We talked about the APIs, unsecure API keys. I mean, I personally go through the Cleveland Clinic, and I was a MyChart person, and maybe I was rolled out because of my last name, you know, it's Pietrocola, so I'm later in the alphabet. We just got MFA. Like, I'm just able to go into MyChart and do two-factor just to get in. And obviously there's APIs bringing data in from all over the place. How can that be? This is 2022, right? Does anybody know the percentage of mid-sized businesses, so that's businesses under, like, say, 2,000 employees, Gartner defines it as 1,500, that actually have deployed MFA across the enterprise? Does anybody know the percentage? Anyone want to throw out a number?
50%.
50? It'd be great, but that's high. You said 15. Right. It just broke double digits like last month, according to research. It's a great guess, 15. It's actually like 11%. That's it. And this stuff is not that hard. I mean, does it stink sometimes to get out your phone, go to your authenticator app and do it? It's pain. But do you care if it can save so much? I don't know, some organizations just maybe don't get there. It takes time to produce. And that's no crack at anybody, because no matter what I've seen to do these days, MFA is hit or miss enterprise level, mid-size level. It seems like the smaller guys do it probably quicker, and it's probably because they know maybe the fate of their business could literally fall apart if they were hacked, right? Where a larger organization, maybe gets around it. Like, look at Target. Like, Target got hacked and their sales went through the roof. Like, people just didn't leave Target. They're like, let's go back. They're probably having a sale today. Like, like, that didn't hurt their brand. I guess we need Target, right? More than we need some of these other companies. And then obviously protocols leaving open. You can just see these are really simple things, but from a healthcare perspective, these were the tops. I find that to be odd. Like, I wanted to see something really cool here, like just really hard stuff to do, right? Like, this stuff's pretty easy to lock up. So a little bit earlier, we talked about, I mentioned the word CSPM, right? So I think this was my first acronym. So you guys went about 15 minutes not hearing an acronym, so I think that's good. Usually I throw acronyms all over the place. So cloud security posture management. You're starting to see more companies offer this, start building it into their applications that they're offering to you, whether that's what they do, CSPM only, or you're starting to see lots of other companies offer this, right? Because they know as you move more to the cloud, this is something that you not only need, but if you're trying to reduce vendor sprawl, are there folks in here trying to reduce cybersecurity vendor sprawl in this room? No? You guys like working with 187 vendors? All right. I guess it's a lot of free gifts sometimes too, so that's cool. No, a lot of people are. And the more they can offer more cloud security, you know they're gonna try to stay with you, lock up the loyalty with you, keep grabbing that piece of your budget. But it's really important stuff, because the more cloud security management you can do, you're using technology that's continually running to understand where there could be misconfigurations. technology that's continually running to maybe remediate some of those, not all, but maybe some of those. And that can go a long way, or at least alert us that something needs to happen, right? Sometimes it's, forget the detection part, it's did somebody get alerted to this, right? You know, being in the log analysis world, you hear folks all the time like, we got Splunk running, it gives us about 87,000 emails a day telling us all of our problems. Like, yeah, it goes into a folder. Like, have you ever looked at that folder? Like, no, not happening, right? People see this all the time with logging solutions. So with CSPM, not only is it going to give us the ability to detect and monitor, but also hopefully help through some of that remediation. By the way, my company does not sell CSPM, so I'm not plugging it right now. So maybe down the road, though. Okay, so let's talk about a few case studies. And look, at the end of the day, we all read the horror stories. This conference or this talk is not supposed to dive into any of these. The point is, all big companies, right? Okay, Facebook, voter. Well, the middle one might have happened intentionally, as we know, what's happening with votes these days, or maybe. But that one seems to be a little odd. And then obviously we have the Capital One, which I think that person just got sentenced recently, like over the last week, which I find to be pretty interesting. But these are all big companies with budgets that I can't even count the zeros after the commas that they have, right? And they have cloud misconfiguration issues. So the point of that is obviously if the big guys can, and voting, and Capital One, and Facebook, that seems to, it's not just Facebook, it's Instagram, it's WhatsApp, right? That's all the brands. I found it interesting, WhatsApp was down the other day, and it caused like an international uproar, because if anybody does business internationally, you get less emails from those folks, you get less text messages from those folks. They are all about WhatsApp, right? So what's up with WhatsApp, apparently? But when you see big companies that have the budgets and the teams and the talent, and they can't keep up with it, the folks in this room, no matter what organization you're with, just shows you how hard of a job we have, and that we have to continue to work as cyber professionals to not only educate ourselves with this stuff, but work on our teams, our bosses, our budgets, to bring more of this talent in and more of this education in. Again, a little bit earlier, I talked that nation states probably not, going after, the majority of folks in this room's organizations. And that's a good thing, because obviously stopping a nation state is probably just about, impossible for, the majority of folks. Unless there's an organization that's doing things in arenas like space, obviously government. Like I said, a lot of us don't have to think about these things. But how many folks have deployed things like around containers like Kubernetes, Docker, different things like that? Is that something that you guys are working through or thinking through? Okay, a bunch of people are. Okay, and it's tremendous technology, right? And there was a good question yesterday. There was this woman from Cardinal Health that was talking about how do you secure Kubernetes? And I always take the stance that securing anything, it's the wrong word. Like, we can all try to secure, we can all try to play defense, but the key word's probably risk mitigation, or the phrase is probably risk mitigation, right? Like, we're gonna work really hard at securing everything we have, whether it's Kubernetes, whether it's our firewalls, endpoints, whatever it is. But if we get beat, what can we do to mitigate the damage? What can we do to mitigate the risk, whether that risk is loss of data, whether that risk is money we pay, whether that risk is brand, whatever it might be? What can we do to mitigate that risk? Well, as more folks move to Kubernetes, and thinking these things are fastly spun up, right? Less problems. You get one set perfectly, you spun another one up, man, you're in really good shape. These show examples of how Kubernetes and different technologies can be beat. And by the way, just because that was a Russian GRU campaign, and by the way, this was published by the FBI earlier this year, doesn't mean now this technology hasn't been sold to hacking groups all over the world that are now using this, obviously, to come after individual businesses, potentially using Kubernetes, right? Like, we all know the genesis of these things. When the government's done with it, it filters down. Just like, we saw way back when with, the United States government working with the Israeli government to take down those centrifuges back in Iran a number of years ago. That started off, very clandestine, and then that thing matriculated through the web very quickly, where people were using it for all kinds of things, right? So we don't have to go into ancient history, but the point is these things will filter their ways down, and it starts with intelligence like this. And it's great that these guys have been, well, it's not great, let me take it back. I guess it's fortunate from a cyber perspective, these guys have been preoccupied with that war. But again, as like I said, as the FBI said, there's a big dip, here comes probably the big swing up. All right, so let's talk about some of these different changes from an alerting perspective and a monitoring perspective. Show of hands, the folks that are using cloud, is it continuous monitoring? Does everybody have continuous monitoring? Lots of hands? Okay, good, that's great, right? There's still folks in here that didn't shake their head, so I'm just assuming there isn't continuous monitoring, which is more prevalent than you think, okay? I won't even give you statistics on that because it'll probably make you laugh or make you feel really, really good that you guys are using continual monitoring. But when you think about monitoring for cloud misconfigurations and policy changes that lead to those security vulnerabilities, think about some of these. Like some of these seem to be, and again, just no duh, right? Misconfigurations, probably a little bit harder, but policy violations. Like you lay out all these policies. Are they being changed, updated? Are they being followed? Or, are they being touched? All things like that. Think about unauthorized access. Think about how good your organizations are in here of cleaning out old accounts. Like maybe some of you are really good. I will guarantee you some of you probably aren't as good. We recently took over some business from an organization that did SLED, so state, local government, education vertical. Any folks in there from those verticals? No one wants to admit it just now, or no? Okay. Shocking to see the maintenance and upkeep at some of those types of organizations. They're probably the biggest offenders. Not gonna name any names. Maybe at the bourbon thing tonight after a couple of cocktails. No, I'm just joking, I still wouldn't do that. But they are notorious and awful at just cleanup of accounts. People who've left, changed roles, responsibilities. Like, they're just like, what's he gonna do? He's been here forever. Like, I don't know what he's gonna do. Like, but we don't wanna find out, right? And they're notoriously bad at that. But those are things that if you're constantly monitoring, you know what's there, who's gone. Clean those things up, right? What about unusual admin activity? Has anybody monitored that? And sometimes with unusual monitor or admin activity, what we see as an organization that monitors companies, it's not necessarily someone who's malicious. It's somebody who's just negligent. And negligence a terrible price to pay, right? Because negligence means through proper discussions and training and things like that, hopefully, we can get this person to stop doing that activity, right? If they're malicious, obviously they're gonna do what they're gonna do and obviously move on. But negligence is where it's overwhelming. It's like 80-some% when it's an unusual activity. It's generally just negligence, right? And that's something I think a lot of folks don't think about. If you give someone access to something, you're like, oh, that's within their role. But are you monitoring what they're actually doing even though they have those permissions? And I'm telling you, that number drops tremendously. It's a set it and forget it mentality where these are the things that tend to get us into a lot of trouble. And you can see the rest, obviously. They make a lot of sense. So to kind of firm up, cloud security posture management as your organizations go more into the cloud, maybe as you look for CSPM tools, some different things, right? Continuous monitoring, which is extraordinarily important. What about the risk visualization and assessment? Totally understanding, again, what that risk is, and more importantly, how do we mitigate that risk? I think that's the key. As cyber professionals, sometimes you, probably your CEO, maybe even the board, depending on what your exposure is we gotta secure everything, we gotta stop everything. Totally hear you. That's our goal. But what about risk mitigation board? CEO, let's talk about how we can mitigate our risk in case something does happen, right? And it's that type of mindset that helps us clean some of these things up. Auto remediation, we talked about that. What about compliance? I'm sure there's folks in here that have compliance. HIPAA, GDPR, whatever, New York Department of Financial Services, which looks to be getting pretty serious from a financial perspective. That framework is out there, not 100% passed. They're probably waiting for the election in the next couple of weeks with the governor, but that looks like it's gonna happen. Compliance monitoring is huge, and it's gonna get even more important when you see these compliance frameworks changing. DevOps, right? Like DevOps is that word we all kind of kick around and use, but if people are developing applications in here, my company produces applications all the time. What do you do as soon as they're past your QA? Just Launch them, baby. Get it out there. Let everybody know this is out there for the world. Are we running security every single time an application is changed? Like the first time an application is built and launched, yeah, we probably do everything to make sure the code's solid, run it through Veracode, do all these tests, like it's awesome, right? Like this is solid. And then like 2 weeks later, you guys do a bug update, you add a couple new pieces of functionality. Are you rerunning things? Probably not, right? It was good the first time. Let's see how it handles things out there now. So this is why CSPM will become more prevalent over the next couple of years. And you're starting to see, like I said, a lot of vendors. There's probably vendors out there right now that are offering this. I didn't walk around yet today, I will, but there's probably a bunch of folks talking about CSPM right now. We talked about some of these already, and this kind of goes back to the shared model. I think one thing that's important is encryption. And this slide talks a little bit about encryption in that second bullet point. Is everything cloud provider offer encryption across the board, where encryption is obviously needed? And I think you'd be surprised. I think everybody just says, yeah, it has to be, right? Like, why? How could they not? Believe it or not, it's not. And it's not something that is 100% always accessible. It's not always 100% available either. And by the way, when you're thinking about encryption, do you have the folks at your organizations that can make that happen, right? And use those shared tools? Again, that's a question you ask yourself, but I think when you look at encryption across the board, we're all severely lacking in what's encrypted and not. I mean, some of the horror stories out there, not only horror stories you read in the Wall Street Journal or read online in the different forums or blogs. I see customers every day, and the data they'll pass back and forth that's unencrypted, and like that's pretty crazy, right? So what's some of the key takeaways? Again, I don't point out everything on a slide, but I also make sure I talk about this. That first bullet point, review contracts. Okay, is there any lawyers in here? No? Okay, good. Let's make some jokes. Anybody got a joke about a lawyer there? Okay, there's no lawyers in here. Here's the crazy part about contracts, though. They say what's included and what's not, where the liability rests and where it doesn't, right? Now, once you send it to your general counsel or your attorney, however your organization works, they're looking at it from a legal perspective, right? From a wording perspective. And they're gonna say yay or nay, here's some things that need to be redlined, but they're not technologists, and they're definitely not security technologists. So the question is, when you get a contract from a vendor, a partner, whatever it is, are you or someone on your team from a tech perspective looking at these contracts and understanding them from a tech perspective, not all the herewitho and all the therefores, because that's crazy. Those people make so much money to understand what that means. I will guarantee you the answer to that question is no, not as maybe thorough as we should. And when the lawyer goes yay or nay, we're like, oh, okay, well, if it's their problem. It's our problem. And then we wonder if something happens, why there's liability, why we're not getting compensated, what those SLAs were, all those types of things. At my company, we pass around agreements from a business perspective, like someone like me, our counsel, and then I send it to the smart people, like the CTO and the guys who run our product team, like, hey, take a look at this thing. And they'll find little tidbits, and the lawyer's like, I didn't know what that meant. And it's like, well, then why didn't you say I didn't know what this meant, right? So the reason I bring this up is as technologists, as people who are doing generally the vetting of your tech vendors, I know this stinks, but you gotta read the contracts because you know what that means. And by the way, where are these contracts these days? Do they send them to you in a PDF document that you could redline? No, they're online, you gotta go to a link, and it literally, you scroll for about 7.5 hours of all this stuff, right? It stinks, I get it. But you gotta figure out how to do it because there's so many things in these contracts these days, especially from cloud providers. Like Microsoft doesn't send you a contract anymore, it's all done online, right? Yeah, same thing with Google. I mean, you can't even remotely get somebody, a human being at Google, unless it's an enterprise sales rep, then you can get them pretty damn quick, but like, they're not always gonna be there. You gotta review those contracts. So as you leave here today and say, I hated that guy, because that guy now made me think I gotta review contracts. I'm telling you, that's a big deal, and you'd be surprised what you're gonna see in those contracts. Has anybody ever caught anything in a contract from a tech perspective? Yeah. Do you wanna share or no?
So, at my last company, it was RSA Archer.
Yeah.
For our GRC, and it was SaaS. It did not indemnify us on any loss, GLBA protected data or PII. So we couldn't load it into the cloud in our workplace install.
And you caught that. Did you guys get it redlined or no?
No.
Did you use them?
No, we kept using them. I had to implement something so that no one would load PII into the system of record.
Yeah, that is an awesome case study right there. And you know what's great? You said we caught it. Still used them, maybe you didn't have any options, but then you found another way to maybe get around it with other tech. That's great. That's an awesome case study. Anybody else have anything they want to share? I think that's a great takeaway right there. And no matter how many times we talk about this stuff, this comes up every single time. And there's probably people in here smiling right now. They're probably like, they got burned by something, right? It just happens. All right. Time, okay, like 7-8 minutes because we're eyeing that food line, aren't we? Yeah, I know. I could sense it. I sense this stuff. I'm gonna get you guys in line first. That's why you're gonna like me again. Okay, so everybody here's busy. We all know that. We got these crazy to-do lists. We know that. So how does this stuff help you guys, right? So I say you guys a lot. I know it's not 100% politically correct. So I've been spending a lot of time in Kentucky lately, right? We just acquired a business, so we have a ton of customers there. And they say y'all. And they're trying to get me to say y'all. And obviously you can tell I can't say it without sounding really stupid, right? So by the end of today, I'm gonna maybe use it on you guys, and you're gonna see, I could just use it there. All right, discovery and visibility, right? So how many people actually know the true visibility of their attack surface, right? You probably know every endpoint, you probably know every firewall. Do you know everything in the cloud? Do you know all asset discovery? And I think that's something that sometimes blows people away, what's still available in their networks that could potentially be hit. We talked about misconfiguration a ton, and I think the remediation part of it is something that down the road, over the next couple of years, some of those auto remediation tools, now into the next couple of years are gonna become stronger and better for all of us. The problem is we need to understand what that remediation means. If you have a configuration and it's automatically changed, what does that do to your cloud? What does that do to an application? What does that do to security, right? So it's also understanding all these things. Continuous threat detection. Sounds super simple. Everybody probably says they do it. Do you really do continuous threat detection? Do we truly understand how our cloud environments, especially if you're multi-cloud, right? You got some stuff over here in Azure, like we're good to go there. And like you got a couple little things over on AWS. Maybe you acquired a company, maybe you acquired an application, and you're like, ooh, kind of forgot about AWS, right? Multi-cloud tends to trip people up because those interfaces are nothing alike, right? And they all do different things in very different ways. And they do that on purpose. And then DevSecOps, right? Especially, again, across multiple clouds, right? Making sure that that DevOps process is not just a standard operating procedure, but security is part of it. And it's absolutely part of everything done when we talk about DevSecOps. All right, 10 steps, right? It's the last slide. No, I lied. There's one more slide. It's the InfraGard thing, so hold on. Don't get your plate just yet. This guy's ready over here, let me tell you. 10 steps, all right. Again, look at these 10. Are any of these like, oh my God, these are the most incredible things I've ever seen in my life? I didn't know any of this. You guys all knew this. You guys could have probably wrote this slide. I think I stole it from someone probably out there in a presentation. The point is these things aren't hard, right? They need to be thought through. They need to be considered. You can't launch them all. I understand you can't just do everything tomorrow morning. It doesn't work like that from a resource perspective. But these should be things that are simple enough that we take to our organizations and either gently or with a sledgehammer start deploying really, really quickly, right? Multi-factor. I wish it was 50% like Kevin brought up. It should be 80%. It's just not, right? The conditional access to accounts. Keeping privileged stuff very segmented and separated. And that's a huge part of risk management. Like we talked about encryption, surface area. What about zero trust? This is one I always kind of bring up. Is there any organizations in here working with, I don't want to say total zero trust, but working towards zero trust? Like, yeah, I see a lot of people's heads shaking. Is it going good, going slow? Yeah, and that's when the laughs come out. A lot of laughs from that one. Yeah, it's going to be slow, right? But I think that's obviously something you're going to see just permeating more and more. And then obviously if things happen, what do we do to recover? And just being able to constantly measure and get better, right? Again, the cloud is a huge part of our organizations. It's obviously a huge part of our future. I don't see too many people taking things away from the cloud. I do see some patterns moving where you're starting to bring in less cloud, but I don't think cloud's gonna diminish. And I think what Microsoft just showed with that 42% rise it's only getting stronger. It doesn't mean you still won't do some things, maybe data center-wise or locally, maybe just to take some of the pressure off the costs. I don't know, maybe. Depends on your organization. If you're tech-based, probably not, right? Fintech-based, probably not. But just being able to measure and constantly understand where you are and knowing that the cloud security is something completely different from everything else you're doing, that's probably the first step into thinking through the cloud security posture. All right, y'all, here's what I'm talking about, our last step, InfraGard. Okay, so InfraGard's a great organization, free to join, got like 4 meetings a year, and they're all very impactful, bring in the best speakers. And it's not just cyber, right? There's other things we talk about. One of our biggest was human trafficking, because human trafficking should be near and dear to everybody's heart. And then we brought in some folks to talk about how to use technology and tools to combat human trafficking, which was a fantastic part of the discussion. We bring in all kinds of great topics. It's not just cyber, but they're all about security. They're all about technology and a lot of cyber influence. Our end of the year is December 9th. It's gonna be at the Goodyear Wingfoot. This is where the blimp is parked, man. That's all I'm gonna say. Like, this is cool stuff right here. And I try to get a blimp ride, and they're putting a fence around it to make sure I can't even get close to this thing, because I think that would be cool. But anyway, we're gonna have tremendous speakers from Goodyear, talk about critical manufacturing, supply chain, threat intelligence, transportation logistics, got a great speaker lineup. If you're interested in InfraGard at all, or at least checking out this blimp, take a look at this. There's information on the InfraGard. It's just knockinfragard.org. There's also information on LinkedIn about this as well. But we'd love to see more folks there. It's a tremendous, I think it's gonna be a great event, but it's a tremendous organization as well. If anybody needs any information on InfraGard or wants this slide deck, that's my email right there. There's my phone number too, just don't
That's the most important thing. They're actually gonna have a raffle off.
Yeah.
Or a ride in the blimp. Right?
Are they really? I don't know. Yes, so according to Jess, not Tony, this is Jess Walpole from Fortress, if anybody has a problem.
Thank you.
Oh, you know I love you, Jess. Apparently, if you bring a toy
Those toys, like you bring toys, right?
for Christmas, yeah.
Christmas, then you can put it in, and then when you put in the toy, you also get to be put in a drawing for a ride in the blimp.
There you guys go. So you can get that ride in the blimp.
And there's only gonna be 200 people, so
Yeah, it's limited to 200 people. It's all it can handle that space. So you got a really good odd. Definitely better than Powerball odds. Yeah. All right, any questions, feel free to grab me. Otherwise, enjoy your lunch, enjoy the rest of the conference. You guys were awesome today. Appreciate it.